Russia's President Vladimir Putin is starting his fifth term in office and marking the moment with a lavish inauguration. In these pictures, he enters the lavish hall in the Kremlin palace. He has already served nearly a quarter century, the longest-serving leader in Russia since Stalin. During the ceremony, he placed his hand on the Russian Constitution and promised to defend it. He will be president for another 6 years. Now, Briar Stewart is following the story for us from London. Tell us more about the inauguration. It is the traditional pomp and ceremony we see with Russian occasions such as this. But tell us more what's been happening in Moscow this morning, Briar.
Oh, certainly, Heather. It was very opulent and highly produced. I mean, you had this broadcast that's still going on, really, and it was carried all over state media, and it showed President Putin walking from his office down a very long corridor, then getting into a Russian-made limo and driving over to the palace, where he entered into the room and was applauded by more than 2,000 people that were there for the ceremony. After he took the oath of office, he spoke very briefly. And he began his speech by talking about how he wanted to honor the heroes that were fighting to defend the fatherland. So obviously a reference there to the tens of thousands of Russian soldiers who are in Ukraine. And, you know, that was really a short part of the speech, but certainly outside of the ceremony, you had a military parade that went by. You had tanks that were fired in salute. So obviously the military themes ran quite high in this. Now, I mentioned that over 2,000 people were there. There were also quite a few that were invited that were not there, and that included Western officials, representatives, ambassadors who were in Moscow. We know that Canada, the UK, and the US did not send anybody to the ceremony. France did, Hungary did, and Slovakia did. And I think that just goes to show you some of the division there is around just how to deal and manage the relationships that Western countries still do have with Russia. And in terms of what happens next, now that he has been officially sworn in, he's dissolved the government, which is required under the Constitution, and we'll look to see just what happens next, whether or not there is a government reshuffle, and if there is, what might that mean in terms of what we see next from Putin.
So I'm thinking of what else we're seeing in Europe right now, Briar. We have China's President Xi Jinping in France, and France is trying to exert influence on China, to exert influence on Russia, to bring about an end to the war with Ukraine. That continues. So as Putin begins this term as president, just bring us up to date on where it stands in terms of his commitment to the ongoing war and what we're likely to see there.
Well, certainly Russia remains very committed by all the signals that we're seeing. I mean, it's completely ramped up its economy, and all the signs kind of point to the fact that Russia will likely be launching some kind of offensive later this spring in Ukraine, late May, perhaps early June, once the ground dries up a bit and they can move some of their heavy equipment. And then, you know, you mentioned the role that China may play in this. We haven't really seen any serious indications of negotiations being close. We do know that Switzerland is going to hold a 2-day peace summit to try to look at ways to end the conflict in Ukraine in June. That's a summit that they're holding on behalf of Ukraine, but at the moment Russia isn't invited, so you really don't know just how productive that will be able to be.
Briar, thank you very much. Briar Stewart from London this morning.